in the beginning, where is Aisha Khan? And Aisha Khan, thank you so much for the leadership. You are basically dealing with not an issue, put it this way, and I really appreciate your courage of dealing with this particular issue. But I'm also really humbled to be with esteemed panelists here, and particularly my good secretary here, the team Maenza. I travel the world, trying to lead them working for everywhere. So that's really what we do. But this afternoon, I'm here on behalf of the United States Commission on National Religious Freedom. Uh, Aisha Khan did a wonderful job describing the user. So I don't need to do that much. But just to give you a little bit information about the user as an independent, bipartisan U.S. federal government body that is dedicated to promoting the universal rights to freedom of religion or belief abroad, outside the states. On the ongoing basis, user monitors facts and circumstances of violations of religious freedom and make policy recommendations to the President of the United States, to the Secretary of State, and to the United States Congress with respect to matters involving international religious freedom. USCIRF has long monitored and advocated for the repeal of blasphemy laws around the world, which punish, expressions or acts deemed blasphemous, defamatory of religions, or contemptuous of religion or religious symbol, figure, or feelings. And this is a matter that is, I'm aware of. When the dean was chairing the commission just not a while ago, she also advocated for basically abolishing all the blasphemy laws around the world, specific country, and I will come to that as well. So blasphemy cases often occur in the context of broader religious freedom violations, such as violence against places of worship, desecration of religious sites or symbols, as well as hate crimes against individuals of a minority belief group and other types of physical assaults, verbal attacks, or harassment. So just last year, USCIRF released an extensive uh, compendium of blasphemy laws available on our website, www.ucirf.gov, here, identifying 96 countries around the world, which national level blasphemy laws. We have recommended that the State Department designate a number of these countries to the countries of particular concern, what we call them CPC, to include them on its special or to include them in its special watch list. So many countries around the world, including Indonesia, Nigeria, Pakistan, Russia, and Turkey, use blasphemy laws to incite violence toward religious minorities, or as a pretext to enforce other agendas. In Russia, for example, the government has used blasphemy laws to target individuals perceived to have insulted the Russian Orthodox Church. In Nigeria, the Gulf states and the Federal Capital District currently use blasphemy laws to target those deemed to have insulted Islam. Furthermore, we have found extensive and excessive enforcement and abuse of blasphemy laws in Pakistan, where the court system consistently violates the rights of religious minorities, including members of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. Many individuals in that country, in Pakistan, are currently serving life sentences or long prison terms for alleged blasphemy. This tragic and well-documented trend is a significant part in USCIRF recommending Pakistan's designation as a country of particular concerns every year since 2002 for committing and tolerating systematic, ongoing, and egregious violations. So USCIRF made these recommendations most recently in our 2024 annual report that highlighted current religious freedom challenges in Pakistan, including the misguided efforts of Pakistan officials to strengthening its blasphemy law. To provide more context, USCIRF has identified an increase in the use of blasphemy laws and associated violence to target individuals in Pakistan, particularly from religious minority communities, who face accusations of insulting Islam. USCIRF is particularly concerned that in 2024 alone, there have been several instances of Pakistani police who dropped eggs ostensibly to protect the community, facilitating the extrajudicial killing of those accused of blasphemy. Mob violence in response to mere accusations or rumors of blasphemy also occurs with alarming frequency as well, including the horrific attack in June. You have seen that in Sorogoda that resulted in the death of 70 years old Christian man Nasar Messiah. In response to such ramped abuse, USCIRF has made specific policy recommendations, urging the United States government to work with Pakistan as well as with other governments to stop its mainstream, to stop its mistreatment of religious minorities and to reform discriminatory laws. In the case of Pakistan, such effort would include entering into a binding agreement with that country's government to encourage the repeal of blasphemy law and anti-Ahmadiyya laws until a full repeal becomes a reality. The United States Commission on International Religious Freedom will continue to recommend that the United States government seize every available opportunity to encourage the Pakistani government to enact reforms to make blasphemy a bailable offense, require higher threshold of evidence by accusers, ensuring proper investigations by senior police officials, as well as to allow authorities to dismiss unfounded accusations. And while we were pleased that the United States State Department accepted our recommendations to redesignate Pakistan as a country of particular concern in December of 2023, we will continue to recommend that it lift the national security waiver so that commensurate sanctions can be imposed. So in summary, blasphemy laws remains one of the most significant challenges to religious freedom around the world. As the case of Pakistan so clearly illustrates, we at USCIRF will continue to send and shed light on these violations of religious freedom and to advocate for the release of all prisoners who face detention or conviction and imprisonment under these abusive laws. So we have to work together in order for all of us to try to help Pakistan to repeal this law or not to implement them. So thank you so much again for the opportunity to share with you, and I'm looking forward for the discussion.
Thank you so much, Aisha. and all the distinguished speakers and attendees for giving me the opportunity to address the horrific wave of extrajudicial killing, mob violence, and on the name of blasphemy and apostasy in Pakistan. I just wanted to comment on Aisha as she started saying that we want to address apostasy, right to convert, right to leave Islam. First of all, I want to say Pakistan does not give that right to leave Islam. Officially in Pakistan, there is no religious freedom in Pakistan. Pakistan directly put restrictions on religious freedom when it comes to leave Islam or to accept or adopt any other religion. And next to my speaker also said that Pakistan is multiple times has been put on particular concern, but Pakistan does nothing than to give the counter statement after USCIRF put them on particular concern. Nothing than that. The situation has been worsened in Pakistan. I'm just returning from Pakistan after seeing the situation on the ground, how people have been lynched, murdered, and accused of blasphemy. Churches, the places of worship have been attacked by the mob violence, as you have addressed. Well, thank you so much. On behalf of Jubilee Campaign, I would like to address these horrific extrajudicial killings and mob violence of individuals accused of blasphemy and apostasies in Pakistan. This situation underscores the government's ongoing failure to uphold the obligation to respect and protect human rights, particularly the right to life, right to access to justice, for fair trial, and freedom of religion or belief. The misuse of blasphemy laws pose a grave threat to human rights, justice, and rule of law. These laws are often weaponized against minorities, including Christian, Hindu, Ahmadis, Shias, and other religious minorities in Pakistan. And these are most often motivated by the extremists to gain political vote, political gain, political score, to settle political score in Pakistan, like TLP. Their standpoint is only to protect the dignity of Prophet Muhammad and Islam. And they, of course, when these kind of lynching happened, they praise by killing other and saying that, look, we are doing well on our standpoint for getting votes of others. Statistics reveal that around 103 individuals have been killed extrajudicially in connection with blasphemy allegation between 1994 until September 2024. Since May, as other colleague has also mentioned, at least 4 people have been accused of blasphemy and killed by the mob across various groups, various regions, including Sargodha, Swat, Balochistan, and Sindh. So Pakistan has failed to investigate, put an impartial investigation to prosecute those who have lynched, who have killed these individuals. When we talk about, for example, the case of recently mentioned the Nazir, he was running a business, a shoe factory, and the neighbor got jealous and he came out and he said, you have committed any blasphemy, you have burned the page of Quran. And this person went, he belonged to TLP, went to the mosque, used the loudspeaker of the mosque, calling people to come, somebody has desecrated of Quran, and we have to protect the dignity of Islam, respect of Islam, and we have to kill this person. In a few minutes' time, thousands of people came and they attempt to lynch him. They lynched, actually that person was killed 70 years at the spot, but agencies took him, hide him for a few days in a hospital, not giving us the right information if he is dead or alive. After a few days, they tell Nazir is dead. So these people, when they were lynching, the police was in their presence. Police, they were making the videos. The mob was making videos saying, look how law enforcement agencies like police, other agencies are getting involved supporting us, participating us in this incitement and in this violence. So the government, rather than to prosecuting those, after a few months, the people who were arrested to show the international community, look, we have arrested those around 100 or 60 or 80 people who were inciting violence. After a few months, one of the extremist judge gave them, all of them, free bail. They all were set free after a few months. So this is the justice system which is in Pakistan. Pakistan may have not executed on blasphemy laws, but Pakistan is also not freeing people who are accused of blasphemy. There are people who is accused of blasphemy, spent years and years in prison, like decades. We have the example of, for example, Anwar Kanath. I saw the poster. This is a Christian man, a scholar, was working in the officially department of government, was accused of blasphemy in 2002, and he was sentenced to death by the Session Court of Lahore. He was sentenced to death by High Court of Lahore in 2014. His appeal is at the Supreme Court of Pakistan. And since 23 years, Pakistan, the court is not releasing him. So where Pakistan is not executing, people are dying in the courts. People are their cases are getting lingering on in the case. Shagufta Kiran, another Christian woman, is sentenced to death. She is since 2021 in the prison simply for sharing her thoughts in a WhatsApp group which was made to discuss about religion. So she was the part of the group which Muslim people, Ahmad, the other religion, were sharing their thoughts, their opinion, their beliefs in a group, and her discussion, her comments were deemed insulting to Quran or to Islam, and then she was accused of blasphemy. She was sentenced to death. The judge who sentenced her to death, he was so extreme. He said Shagufta should be sentenced to death. The court judgment is saying that Shagufta should be sentenced to death by hanging until her death is confirmed. That is the sentence mentioned in the judgment. So these judges are biased. They are using discriminatory terms. They are not letting people to have the right to fair trial, or there is not any fair investigations when it comes to blasphemy laws. So I would like to, as I have a very short time, so I would like to recommend that Pakistan must repeal blasphemy laws. Blasphemy laws, a mere accusation, as said, people are accused, they spend years and years in prison, they do not have right to bail. So blasphemy offense which carries death penalty also does not give right to people to have bail. Simply one is accused and that person has to spend the rest of their life in prison or many years. Pakistan must reform or amend these blasphemy laws and remove death penalty on apostasy and blasphemy laws. And Pakistan must, if we see there are so many lynching, so many attacks on places of religious, so many attacks on churches. Last year in 2023, on 16th of August 2023, there was an attack on Christian churches on the false accusation of blasphemy, that somebody has desecrated the page of Quran. They burned the 26 churches in Jarawala and almost 100 of houses. So people who have been lynching these individuals, attacking the places of worship, attacking the churches, attacking the places of worship of Ahmadiyas, they have been not prosecuted. They are free. They are set free by the government. That is the failure, and that's what I want to address. That if the international stakeholders can put pressure on Pakistani government, that is the only thing. If Pakistan prosecute them, if Pakistan hold accountable those who take the law into their own hands, we have some changes. We have a hope that then these people can have some kind of freedom or protection or right to live in Pakistan. If Pakistan will not prosecute those, the situation going to be worsened. Christians are on daily basis, they are facing, they are not protected, they are facing the death threats because of blasphemy laws. I always say the blasphemy laws is a hanging sword on the neck of religious minorities. Anybody can just, wrap their neck, cut their neck and then, harm others. On a last comment, I just want to say the Chief Justice of Pakistan, in a recent ruling, Chief Justice of Pakistan said, I will just end with this statement, that he gave a bail to an Ahmadi accused of blasphemy, who was accused of blasphemy, and Chief Justice said he is not guilty, he is innocent. He gave him bail and said Ahmadi community or other minorities has right to practice or to profess their rights in a private place. So extremist group from TLP said, whatever Chief Justice said, this is not right. The Ahmadi or other Ahmadis does not has right to practice their religion in Ahmadi. And on a public place, from leader of the TLP said, whoever will go out there and cut the head of the Chief Justice of Pakistan, I will reward that person 10 million of Pakistani rupees. Other TLP said, we will reward 20 million of Pakistani rupees. So this is the situation in Pakistan that we are facing. Imagine if the Chief Justice of Pakistan receiving that kind of threat, a common, ordinary Pakistani who is accused of blasphemy, what kind of life, what kind of threat or he is facing in Pakistan, or being religious minorities. That's why the situation at the ground is very serious, very worse. We need to take a tangible action and stand to protect the right of religious minorities and individuals who are living in Pakistan. Thank you very much.
Okay. By virtue of Section 38, subsection 1 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, we don't have apostasy laws. This particular section gives you the right to have a religion, the right not to have a religion, the right to change your mind, etc. So apostasy is properly taken care of under jurisdiction. However, we still have the blasphemy laws, which don't seem to be going anywhere. And that was why in 2020, we took over the Kano State government. We took on the Kano State government in the case of Yahya Aminu Sharif. He was sentenced to death for blasphemy. He was sentenced to death without legal representation. There were 2 cases, which we did in the year 2020, shortly after COVID. The other one was for Omar Farouk Bashir, who was set free completely. Yahya is extremely lucky to be alive because a mob descended on his family home, completely destroyed it, and everyone ran helter-skelter. Deborah Samuel Yakubu is not so lucky. She wasn't so lucky. She was murdered by her classmates, and her cousin narrowly escaped being lynched. I spoke to her cousin, myself, Asabe, in Jos a couple of months ago. I can tell you that she's just delivered a baby a few days ago. So something to be joyful about. And as I said, Yahya Aminu Sharif was very, very lucky. He could have just been murdered the same way Deborah Samuel Yakubu was murdered by our own classmates, people who she knew, people who she went to school with in a teacher training college. Also, we had a case of a butcher who was killed in the market because he said something and fellow butchers pounced on him. Obviously, they're stuck in trade and knives, and that was how this gentleman was murdered. Nothing came out of it. In Deborah Samuel Yakubu's case, there were only 2 people who were arrested, and they were given the lesser charge of affray and public disturbance. After a few court appearances, I think like 2 or 3, the prosecution refused to turn up, the police refused to turn up, and they were discharged completely. So they got off the hook. And that is a pattern in Nigeria that we always see. The police seem, or the authorities in northern Nigeria, seem to be always protecting perpetrators of these extrajudicial killings. So it's an entrenched culture in northern Nigeria. There was one case which I stumbled upon when we were doing our research, and the case was determined by the Supreme Court, Shala versus State. Shala is spelled S-H-A-L-L-A. That's one of the very few incidences where you have the prosecution follow these to the letter. This gentleman, Shala, and a couple of other people pounced on someone and slaughtered him. Basically, they chopped off his head for blasphemy. And the police in Kano arrested them, and they were found guilty. And this Mr. Shala was sentenced to death, and he appealed his case all the way to the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court confirmed the sentence that he took the law into his hands. But these are far and in between. You hardly or seldom get this kind of response from the authorities. What are the recommendations? And I've said this before elsewhere. The State Department needs to return us back on the list of the countries of particular concern. This greatly worries and troubles the Nigerian authorities because they like to be seen in good light. So there has to be a carrot and stick approach. Immediately, the State Department delisted us. Attacks continued in northern Nigeria, it spiked, and it essentially seemed as if it was a pat on the back to condone what was happening. Secondly, Nigeria needs to be reminded of its obligations under international law. Sometimes it seems that we don't echo this loud enough and actually speak to the government that we have obligations. We signed up to international law and treaties, the ICCPR, etc., the African Charter, so many fantastic documents which Nigeria has signed up to, which actually we should be protecting our citizens from this. Number 3, travel bans should be handed out to the traditional monarchs, because the traditional monarchs in northern Nigeria are very influential. They're very close to the grassroots. So if we say the friends, family, associates, everyone who is from this part of Nigeria, generally northern Nigeria, in all these states where all these killings go on extrajudicially, if you start by saying we're going to restrict you from traveling to our countries, your children cannot come in school, you cannot come for medical education, the traditional monarchs, the governors, the politicians, where this practice has gone unchecked, I think we're going to see a great change, and they will respond faster because it will concern them directly. So in a nutshell, that is the situation in Nigeria. We are the Supreme Court right now, where we're challenging the constitutionality of these laws. And I have no doubt in my mind that things will change. We just need to test the law. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aisha. Thank you, all the organizers for this event today. I mean, the purpose of today's event is to give recommendations on how to detect and prevent extrajudicial killings. And I think from an Ahmadi perspective, I would just like to share something with you as to how did we get here. Because the persecution of Ahmadis in Pakistan is very structural. It's systematic, it's embedded, and it's complete. Can we move to the next slide? I just want to sort of briefly walk you through how things, in the very little time that I have. So in 1974, the Pakistani Parliament, under a democratically elected government, amended the constitution. And it basically inserted a definition of who is a Muslim and who is a non-Muslim. And the definition of Muslim says anybody who professes this and this is a Muslim, except for Ahmadis. And the definition for non-Muslim says non-Muslim includes Christians, Hindus, Parsis, and the Ahmadis. Now, one could argue that a democratically elected parliament is well within its rights to amend the constitution and to describe who is and who is not a Muslim in an Islamic republic. However, there's one problem. The problem is the Ahmadis profess to be Muslims. They're a sect within Islam. They walk like Muslims, they talk like Muslims, they give their kids Muslim names. When somebody dies in the community, the funeral rites happen according to Islamic rites. When somebody is getting married, the marriage traditionally follows the Islamic tradition. So in happiness, in sorrow, in death and despair, Ahmadis are unfortunately, for them, Muslim. Muslim appearing, Muslim presenting. I mean, I grew up as an Ahmadi in Pakistan. We don't have any underground bunkers where we go to be non-Muslims and then suddenly appear overground and pretend that we are posing to be. So this dichotomy created a problem for Ahmadis, because then the state is telling you you're a hypocrite. You're actually not who you present yourself out to be. And this constitutional amendment was symbolic in the sense that it didn't change much on the ground for Ahmadis, except that they could not become president or prime minister, posts that were reserved traditionally for Muslims. But this wasn't enough. So the religious extremist elements kept pushing the government, till in 1984, Ordinance 20 was passed, this time under a military dictator. And this ordinance included provisions in the penal code saying that, listen, if Ahmadis call their place of worship a mosque, or if they refer to the call to prayer as an azan, which is what it's called, then it's a criminal offense, punishable up to 3 years. So Ahmadis could no longer call their place of worship a mosque. Well, that was quite bad. Ahmadis were very disappointed, disillusioned, but for the extremist elements, that wasn't enough either. So the government went 2 steps ahead. In 1986, it added a provision called 298C, and I want you to remember this, 298C, which basically said that, yes, you cannot call your place of worship a mosque, you cannot refer to the call to prayer as azan, but you also cannot practice your religion. You cannot pose to be a Muslim. And funnily, it also had this very broad, overarching provision which said, if Ahmadis do anything that outrages the feelings of Muslims, it's an offense punishable by imprisonment up to 3 years and a fine. But that wasn't enough. The law was ostensibly challenged before the Supreme Court of the country, the highest court, the dispenser of justice, the beacon of light. And the Supreme Court an argument was presented, as the speaker before us was saying, the Constitution, if it guarantees freedom of religion, you cannot have such laws exist in the country. But you know what? The Supreme Court, by a majority of 4-1, ruled these laws are perfectly legal. Why? Because if you let Ahmadis practice their religion, it could create a law and order situation. And what is that law and order situation? Well, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court said in his opinion that the existence of Ahmadis is comparable to Salman Rushdie, the controversial author. So just the fact that you exist is a blasphemy. But that's not where things stopped. In 2005, the government reenacted an executive order under which when you go to a Pakistani embassy here or you go to the passport office back home, you have to sign a declaration if you want to register as a Muslim that you think Ahmadis are kafir, they're non-Muslim, you think that they're infidel and imposters, and then you condemn the founder of the community. Personally, I'm not making this up. This is all there in the law. You just go to the internet, search Pakistan passport declaration, and this will come up. But that's not where it stopped. In 2015, the Punjab provincial government, Punjab being the biggest province in the country, banned all publications by the Ahmadi community, all publications. And then in 2016, the electronic crimes law was introduced. So now anybody who posts anything on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter in support of the Ahmadis could potentially be charged with blasphemy. And the FIA, which enforces these laws, has sought to have extraterritorial jurisdiction. So I could post something here and they could potentially send me a notice under the blasphemy laws. And as our friend Joseph mentioned, the Supreme Court, there's some few good people in there too. In 2024, the Chief Justice tried. He said, you know what, this is ridiculous. Let Ahmadis at least practice the religion in their own 4 walls. Let them at least celebrate Eid, the festival. Let them say their prayers. And within months of him giving a judgment which was favorable and which was considered to be a departure from the previous law, there was immense pressure. There was a bounty on his head, and he had to publicly revoke that judgment. And this is the environment, unfortunately, that Ahmadis have to live in. And the particular concern now is this is not where it's going to stop. The radical elements are now demanding 4 more things. They're saying every Ahmadi should add the word Qadiani to the end of their name. Why? So they can be identified. Because they look like Muslims, right? They walk like Muslims, they talk like Muslims. You can't tell looking at me whether I'm Muslim or not, right? So that is one of their demands. They also want to make sure that there's a separate national identity card for all Ahmadis, so that again, they can be identified. Because otherwise they're imposters and hypocrites who will hide, within everybody. And then they also want Ahmadis to pay jizya, which is a tax that non-Muslims have traditionally been asked to pay under Muslim sort of Islamic rulers. And there's also been a demand that the Ahmadis should not be able to serve in the government. Right now, it's very, very difficult. I mean, I'll tell you something. If you want to get married, there's something called a nikahnama, which is the marriage form where you write the name of the spouses, the haq meher, those sorts of things. And basically, that also has this declaration that you have to first declare you're not Ahmadi. You have to declare that you don't consider Ahmadis to be Muslim, and that you also consider the founder of the community to be an impostor. Imagine this. Imagine that everybody in the country of 200 million getting married, some people multiple times, have to sign a declaration, not that they'll love their wife or husband, not that they will be decent people, not that they will pay their taxes, not that they will follow the law, but that they consider the founder of the Ahmadi community to be an imposter, that they consider people like me and my family to be imposters and infidels and hypocrites. This is how embedded, structural, systematic, and complete the persecution of Ahmadis is in Pakistan. And I think if I have a minute, the recommendations are, as Joseph said, the laws have to go. The laws have to go. There is absolutely no way these laws can exist. And these laws, just repealing the blasphemy laws will not do it. You have to repeal the Second Amendment that was passed in 1974. Because as long as the Constitution says Ahmadis are non-Muslim, they're going to be declared hypocrites. The government also has to make sure that it stops benefiting from this culture of impunity that has been created. But frankly, what the government and the military do in Pakistan is they benefit from these elements. They actually use these elements to benefit themselves. And the third thing is that the international community, when it can be consistent on human rights issues, it should actually pressurize the Pakistani government, and it should tell the Pakistani government that we link your aid, because Pakistan is heavily dependent on international aid and the IMF and the World Bank. It should actually make sure that the Pakistani government gives solid and concrete commitments that it will protect vulnerable minorities. And I think lastly, there is thousands of Ahmadis who are desperate to leave Pakistan. And you can imagine why. Thousands of them are languishing in places like Thailand and Malaysia and Sri Lanka. And I think in the international community, particularly the US government, needs to step up, declare them a community of particular vulnerability, and then offer them refugee protection in this country and other parts of the world so that they can breathe, so they can go to school, so they can just be themselves. And I think it is high time that the international community also step up and do its bit to protect the Ahmadi community from attacks under these laws. Thank you very much.
This year, a Pakistani school teacher, Safura Bibi, was walking towards her work when she was attacked by 3 women with knives and sticks and was killed. These women claimed that one of their child relatives had seen a dream in which she was committing blasphemy, and in that dream, the Prophet ordered these women to kill the teacher. 2 years later, in a separate incident in Lahore, a woman narrowly escaped a mob lynching sparked by misinterpretation of her clothing. When she and her husband were out shopping, a passerby mistook Arabic calligraphy on her dress for Quranic verses and accused her of blasphemy. Soon a mob gathered and wanted to behead her. Some shopkeepers intervened, the police arrived, and she was saved. But in most cases, especially when communities, neighborhoods of religious minorities such as Christian, Hindus, or Ahmadis are accused of blasphemy, there is no police protection, even when the police is aware that blasphemy accusations and campaigns are building up. It illustrates the profound danger of blasphemy accusations. Even the claim of someone committing blasphemy or Arabic calligraphy, not even Quranic calligraphy, can ignite violence and justify murder. Accusations without evidence can serve a death sentence. The blasphemy laws, rooted in colonial-era British legislation, expanded under General Zalbak, as explained by Nasar in the 1980s, to include severe penalties, curb political dissent against military dictatorship, and institutionalized mob violence. From the beginning, these laws were the tools of authoritarianism. We have witnessed in the past decades that these laws are serving the very purpose for which they were invented. That is to curb down dissent, to weaponize it against political, to use it as a political, social, and economic weapon. Mob violence has become institutionalized because of the blasphemy laws, with accusations leading to fatal attacks on individuals, political activists, entire families, and religious communities. This culture of impunity has been exacerbated by the rise of extremist groups like Tehreek-e-Labbaik Pakistan, which has weaponized blasphemy as a political and electoral tool. And that is, I think, the main purpose that was invented. That's why these blasphemy laws were introduced in Pakistan, expanded. TLP was established in 2017-18 to keep political parties, mainstream political parties in check. Just before 2018 election, when Pakistan military wanted to engineer the elections and they wanted to bring their favorite Imran Khan, who thought will be a good puppet for them, they introduced political parties like TLP to cut the vote bank of mainstream political parties. It was founded in 2017, and in 2018 elections, TLP was fielding more than 500 candidates in national and provincial assemblies. And in the electoral campaigns, most of the posters were carrying images of people who had killed in the name of blasphemy. So, and besides using it, and besides being used by the military establishment to keep political parties in check, there is another use of these of blasphemy laws, that is to curb women's movements, women's political movements. You might be aware that in 2021, I really also wanted to show you something. This is a video, I will not be playing it, but also what TLP is doing as a strategy is they are targeting young minds, they are targeting children. In schools of Karachi, Punjab, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, all across Pakistan, in the assemblies in the morning, children are taught to chant the slogans of Satan se juda, Gustakh Rasool ki ek hi saza, that is, there is only one acceptable punishment for the blasphemous, and that is to behead them. They are learning these things in the school. So imagine in 20 years, Pakistan will be, it's already unlivable for people, for dissidents. In 10, 20 years, that will be even, I don't know if it will be possible for anyone who is dissident to live in Pakistan. I want to bring attention to another important issue, which does not capture the attention of media when it comes to blasphemy law, of how Pakistan military is now using, and Pakistan state is using these blasphemy laws to curb dissent. One against Aurat March in 2021, Aurat March became popular. The organizers were booked in blasphemy cases. Taliban also came out and they warned they warned Aurat March organizers to fix their ways. Otherwise, they have people who know how to fix them. And besides that, I want to bring your attention to, besides Aurat March, this accusing Aurat March organizers was not the end of the correct use of blasphemy law. This year, there were huge, massive protests in Kashmir led by People's Rights Movement. Young people were leading the movement, and the movement successfully won the right of affordable electricity for 4.5 million people. The Pakistani state let the protesters win this right for the people. But once the protests was over, hand in gloves with the religious extremists, they started witch hunting the leaders of this movement. Two young people, Asma Batul and another person, Asma Batul and one other colleague of her, were booked in case of blasphemy. Why? Because they had tweeted or shared a post on Facebook which said after there was this rape against a woman in India, in protest for that, she posted a poem on Facebook which says, Khuda Bhagwan aur Ishwar sab maujood the jab rape hua, which says the God, Ishwar, Bhagwan, everyone was there while I was being violated. And just based on this point, she was accused of blasphemy and arrested, and her colleague Arsalan Shahi, he's on the run. And not only it is used against dissidents in Kashmir, it has also been now used by Pakistani establishment in Balochistan. After very successful Baloch Yekjehdi community's march, which was called as Baloch Rachi Muchi, after the non-violent struggle of Baloch, one of the leaders of the movement, Sabiha Baloch, she was accused of blasphemy. A huge campaign was run on social media, and she had to come and ask for forgiveness and give clearance on social media again and again. And then in the same month, an activist, a Baloch activist, Abdul Rauf, was killed on the accusations of blasphemy. He was related to Hani Baloch, who was a very well-known Baloch woman activist speaking for Baloch rights. Few days later, she was also killed along with her husband in Iran. So this is what is happening. Blasphemy law is not just being used against individuals, it is used very viciously against political movements, against women movements. In 2018, I survived a blasphemy attack, a blasphemy campaign, just a few months after Mashal Khan was killed in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and a few months after 5 bloggers were being kidnapped on accusations of blasphemy. So my recommendations, quickly, I want to give recommendations. One is, of course, you have to abolish the blasphemy law, but also you have to get rid of the objective resolution of Pakistan, and you have to change the whole constitution of Pakistan, make it a secular constitution. Pakistan cannot become a decent, livable country if it continues to be an Islamist and Islamic country. It has to become a secular country. Ban all terrorist outfits like TLP, Tehreek-e-Labbaik Pakistan should be banned. A truth commission should be established. Pakistan military has brought these political parties, nurtured these political parties, and other groups like Taliban who are promoting religious extremism. A truth commission should be established, and all those forces, in political or non-political actors, should be held responsible. And I also urge that the US should put sanctions, ban all those people, police officers, who are involved in misusing or using blasphemy law to curb dissidents, like the police officers who killed Dr. Shahnawaz. They should be sanctioned. They should not be allowed to come to the US. Other police officers who are involved in murders, Omar Sarhandi, who is leader of the TLP, all people like these people should be sanctioned. They should pay a price for what they're doing to Pakistan, people of Pakistan, and to the movements within Pakistan. Thank you.
Dear guests, colleagues, and friends, it's a great honor to join you digitally on this perennially critical and relevant topic of ending violence resulting from apostasy and blasphemy laws. I do regret not being with you in person at the Church Center today, and send you, the organizers, speakers, and the audience, my warm greetings. Having just presented my report on peace and freedom of religion or belief at the General Assembly last week, the question of the absence of positive and sustainable peace is fresh in my mind, let alone the urgency of ending violence, conflict, and war. Violence resulting from apostasy and blasphemy laws do not only occur in states with a stated official religion, but are also found in secular states. They arise not only from state actors, but also non-state actors, occasionally working in collaboration with one another. Blasphemy laws and the related issues of apostasy laws, and the increasingly common promulgation of vague hate speech laws, have been a concern to this mandate across many mandate holders. The means by which blasphemy laws can facilitate oppression are many. They are used to constrain and punish legitimate expressions, including in arts and academia. They play a role in legitimizing violence and incitement to violence and undermine the rule of law, and they have an extraterritorial impact, especially in some cases on refugees and asylum seekers, and they impact religion or belief minorities and others. In relation to freedom of expression, academia, and the arts, blasphemy laws present an obstacle to, and in some cases, an outright violation of respect for freedom of expression and opinion and freedom of religion or belief. These limit not only expressions which relate directly to religious beliefs, but can also have a negative effect on academic and artistic endeavors, which can contribute to debate, explorations, and exchanges in wider society. Cases that the mandate has raised in allegation letters have concerned journalists and scholars, sentence for denigration, death sentences and imprisonment against academics, atheists, and religious or belief minorities, and numerous cases against cartoonists, priests, and others. Ironically, many blasphemy laws are framed and justified with reference to the need to maintain social peace and harmony. Such a framing legitimizes violence and vigilante justice in response to supposedly blasphemous expressions. Many cases reflect this disturbing normalization of violence by third parties against supposed blasphemers, often in collaboration of law enforcement agents. Cases that the mandators raised in allegation letters in this context have concerned, for example, lawyers who have defended converts, those accused of blasphemy with little or no evidence whatsoever, and those accused of disrupting religious unity for reporting death threats against themselves. The collaboration between state and non-state actors can lead to a continuation of the persecution of religion or belief minorities, even after they have been forced to flee their countries of origin and seek safety elsewhere. Some of the cases the mandate has raised have related to religious leaders who have had to escape their country of origin due to the refusal of state authorities to protect them, but whose harassment continues after the escape from the country, and the charges for their murder continues even abroad. Blasphemy laws can essentially facilitate suspicion and marginalization of entire religious communities and minorities. Threats often center around those who have changed their religion or belief, whether or not they publicly share of that conversion. In many instances, the right to change one's religion or belief, which is inherent to Article 18 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, is criminalized outright in law, but in other contexts, laws having an equivalent effect are utilized and threaten freedoms. In closing, it is true that insulting the beliefs or sacred symbols of any religion or belief system can be a harmful expression of intolerance and hatred. Nevertheless, such acts are often expressions of broader cultural and structural forms of violence and processes of othering tied up with other forms of intolerance. In other instances, such expressions are merely expressions of those holding other religions or beliefs. And this is where apostasy laws and blasphemy laws can merge in targeting and othering minorities. As the UN Human Rights Council stated in Resolution 1618 and in the Rabat Plan of Action and the Faith for Rights Framework, states must take positive measures to combat hateful expressions and ensure a domestic atmosphere of respect for the human rights of everyone. And that is in addition to respect for freedom of religion or belief, which includes the right to have, adopt, and change religion or belief without any coercion whatsoever, and also the right to manifest that religion or belief. Our responses to any kind of hate speech must not be informed by the negative human rights impacts of blasphemy provisions and apostasy, anti-apostasy provisions and actions that have been traced here briefly. Our response to the broader challenge of intolerance and hatred must reflect the indivisibility, interdependence, and interrelatedness of human rights. In this frame, combating hatred is quite distinct from upholding the right to change religion or belief, to have and adopt religion or belief, and to manifest it freely, including in public and with others. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to hearing more about this session.
my name is Mashal Naseem. I'm here today to share my story in hopes of helping those who have gone through something similar or are advocates fighting for justice against anti-apostasy and blasphemy laws. To give you a bit of context, I'm a Pakistani American and I'm here today to share my father's story, Ahmad, as Aisha mentioned. My father was born in Peshawar, Pakistan into an Ahmadi family following the Ahmadiyya sect of Islam. Ahmadiyya is a minority sect, however, as was mentioned earlier, in 1974 under Pakistan's constitution, they were declared as non-Muslims. Many of his family members ended up immigrating to the States in the late 70s, early 80s. My father was the youngest of his siblings and the most curious one too. When he was young, he'd spend hours upon hours reading religious books, studying the faith, and analyzing his own beliefs. Shortly after my father was married and had kids, he made the bold decision to leave the Ahmadiyya sect as his views had changed. He then went on to embrace Sunniism, which represents the majority sect of Islam. Despite my father abandoning the Ahmadiyya sect, he did not abandon his interest in speaking about his faith nor his love for studying Islam. He was still seen as a religious minority for this reason, as it was not the norm to talk about Islam in any manner other than what was allowed and deemed as appropriate. In 2018, my father started using social media frequently to share his thoughts about his faith, thoughts that were viewed as controversial by some. He began to make connections online and gathered some attention. Shortly after, some of the individuals he chatted with online ended up inviting him to Pakistan to have an open discussion pertaining to his faith and religion as a whole. My father was a simple and truthful man who believed a promise when he was given one. For this reason, he was lured by the individuals online on the pretense of an open discussion, as they had promised him this was not a setup and that anything that they discussed would not be held against him. These assurances were all to deceive my father. The reality was that the individuals had already made phone calls to the police prior to the discussion, and shortly after my father began to share his views, the police arrested him on charges of blasphemy. The individuals who had set up the meeting had used extremely restrictive laws to entrap and imprison him. My father spent over 2 years in a high-security prison on charges of alleged blasphemy. It's hard to fathom how an allegation could get you imprisoned or worse, killed. However, that's exactly what happened. On July 29th of 2020, more than 2 years into his imprisonment, my father was awaiting a court hearing. A malicious individual snuck a gun into the courtroom my father was in and fatally shot him over 6 times as he waited for his hearing. I'm sorry. Hours later, my family and I will be given the news that would change our lives forever. I'm sorry,
You can take your time, okay? You know what, this is the cost of these laws. These aren't white collar crimes. These are horrific human rights violations that cost people and destroy families and society. So thank you for taking out the academic side of it and reminding us of the human costs
Yes.
of this.
I'm sorry.
No apology needed.
Not only did we learn about his passing, we also learned the gunman wasn't the only one involved. Lawyers who would frequent the jail had collaborated with the perpetrator to plot for my father's death. You would think that after such an incident, there would be an outpouring of support and the recognition that what happened was unjust, but that would be a naive assumption. As shortly after the killer was taken into custody, lawyers and policemen were seen taking lighthearted selfies with him, and he was greeted with hugs and kisses upon his arrival in court. My father's death was made into a mockery. A few days after the killer's arrest, protests in the streets of Pakistan supporting the killer became disturbingly widespread. After my father's death, a hashtag began trending on social media praising his killer, accompanied with pictures of the killer photoshopped with roses to congratulate him on committing what they thought was a good deed. Years later, I have yet to process the reality of losing my father. Navigating life without my father has become the hardest challenge I've had to overcome. Not only was my father the greatest man I had ever come across, he was the most open-minded one too. I remember how incredibly grateful I was and still am for the many adventures I shared with him, including ones where he would take me to forest preserves, both of us on a tangent about the existence of mankind and discussing our relationships with God. We'd lose track of time and wouldn't realize the many miles we had walked because our minds were wandering ahead of us. My father made me fall in love with the idea that questioning your beliefs meant you were getting closer to understanding your faith. It is not a sin to want to understand. I come here today not on the premise to help you understand how great of a man my father was, or for any sympathy regarding the injustice that occurred to my family. I'm here today to help you understand how badly we need these blasphemy laws reformed. What is happening in Pakistan is completely inhumane. The government has made it near impossible to practice your faith if you are a religious minority. It is a tragedy for humanity to continue to ignore this issue, as injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. It should not be a crime, nor should you fear getting charged with one if you choose to speak about your faith, or let alone practice it. It is a human right. Freedom of speech and freedom of religion allows us all to practice our own faith, live in harmony, and not be forced into thinking a certain way. Although I am a practicing Muslim, what I have come to understand about my religion is that it is no one's business what my beliefs are. It is a sacred relationship I have with myself and God. Something I hope we can all learn is to remind ourselves of what it means to be a human being with the freedom of choice, as implied in chapter 2, verse 256 of the Holy Quran, in which it states, La ikraha fid din, which roughly translates to, there is no compulsion in religion. Thank you.
First of all, thank you all for sharing. I think we've all learned a lot and seen from the class of these laws. And I was just going to share a little bit about my own experience. I just recently returned from Iraq and Syria just a couple of days ago, but then I've also been in parts of Africa and Indonesia this year, and dealing with a lot with the state of religious freedom on the ground. And in particular in northern Iraq, the Kurdistan region of Iraq is a pluralistic place. The government is very supportive of religious freedom. They accepted over 1 million people fleeing ISIS. And of course, no government is perfect, but these, even Baha'is are safe there. And, but what I noticed there this last couple of weeks is, meeting with different religious communities, and you can see this simmering extremism, and we're seeing it all over the world, where people are being accused of blaspheming more and more, and for instance, in northern Iraq, we've seen evangelicals that have just posted about their own faith, being a Christian, in a way that offended someone, and then they're accused of blasphemy, and then there's no lawyer that will help them. And the one thing that and we saw this with Yazidis as well. Somebody spoke, mentioned the Prophet Mohammed, and was taken out of context. They got over 1 million hate speech this summer against the Yazidis in Iraq. And of course, they were victims of genocide, so they're, of course, in terror that there's going to be mass violence again against their community. And so one thing that was shared with me a couple of times during my trip in Iraq was that they're seeing government officials self-censor, and they're actually being so careful in what they say to not offend any extremist elements that could be in the community. So what's happening is, instead of having a really robust discourse, everything is so careful that if one person says something that might be considered over some line, then it's used to raise up mob violence, vigilante violence against them. And I also want to tell a story about when I was in Indonesia, when I was on the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. I met with a religious leader who had done such an amazing job in his community to bring together religious communities. And he said to me, literally, if we only had more laws so people couldn't talk bad about each other's religion, we'd have more peace. And I was just like stunned, because I'd always seen them as this vile tool that people use on purpose. But there are some people that literally don't understand the consequence of these laws. I don't think that's most of the time, but I do think some education for people is also important, and there just hasn't been enough dialogue about this. So we'll jump right into some questions for all of you. And if you guys would like, I'm going to ask the first question, but if you guys want to put your hands up and let us know so we can get a mic ready for you. Does anyone have a question? Okay, we have one in the front row. I'm going to go ahead and start with Commissioner Elsanousi. Commissioner, what mechanisms does the U.S. government have at its disposal to hold perpetrators of extrajudicial killing for blasphemy and apostasy accountable? Do you want to take it off the? Yeah, there you go.
Well, thank you so much, Nadine. And so there are a couple of things I just want to mention here. Probably some of you are already aware of the global Magnitsky Human Rights Accountability Act. Basically, that is act sanctions those who are committing blasphemy law or apostasy law or extrajudicial killing. That law allowed the US government to sanction perpetrators, as well as the law also allowed the US government to deny them visas and also to freezing their asset or US property and interest in property in the United States. So that's there. But of course, this is all depending on the country. The US could also hold financial assistance as well from that particular country as well. But Nadine, if you allow me, also I want to just say to mention that we're talking about the government of Pakistan and what the government is doing. But I think, I'm going to say this in my personal capacity now. This is probably not the commission position. But I think in Pakistan, I lived in Pakistan for 4 years. And in Pakistan, I think we really need to do work with the mullahs and the ulamas and the scholars. These politicians, they cannot address blasphemy law or apostasy law because for political reasons, and they are afraid from the mullahs. There is no question about that. And they are afraid from the scholars. They would not do that, I can tell you right now. From my own opinion, I don't think the politicians will do that. What we fail to do in the Muslim world, and including in Pakistan, that all of these blasphemy and apostasy and killing, judicial killing, and all of that, these have nothing to do with Islam. But we don't have any brave scholar in Islam, like Justice Taqi al-Usmani, to come and say that, Prophet Muhammad 1400 years ago in Medina, he did not do this. He brought up the constitution of Medina, Mithaqi Medina. And he had everyone in that community, whatever orientation of religions you have or any orientations, you live in that Medina, right? But right now, people just forget that. So we're trying to talk to the theologians in my commission, capacity again, that what happened to Pakistan? What happened? These are all because of political reason, some extremist ideology, has nothing to do with Islam. My sister clearly ended her remarks by this verse in the Quran we all memorize. No compulsion in religion. La ikraha fi din. You have your religion and I have mine. Lakum dinukum waliya din. Right? We have all of that. But people are not able to say this in Pakistan. Even the scholars, they're not going to say this in Pakistan. So we need to find an alternative to work on this, to have a parallel track, not only pressuring the government, not only telling the government to change laws, but we need to work with those mullahs and scholars in Pakistan, which is something that is, I am not sure this parliament will be able to do it, or I'm not sure people in Pakistan will be able to do it.
I'd be tempted to respond to you.
Respond to
you. For 20 years, I worked in Pakistan in countering violent extremism with young people, preventing young people from joining militant organizations, extremist organizations, worked in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa on promoting alternative ideologies. And what I have learned that most of the development agencies, international organizations, one of the way of working on the issue of countering violent extremism is to work with mullahs, to work with religious clerics. And I think that process has been giving them more power. I think what we need in Pakistan is to disenfranchise the mullah, to take away the power from them rather than giving more power to them. Pakistan has done experiment of engaging mullahs. We have this Islamic ideology concept. What they have done, they have just promoted more extremism in Pakistan. These religious scholars are involved in building curriculums. What they have done, they have made a shit out of the curriculum. I'm sorry for my words, but Pakistani curriculum is promoting extremism. So what we need is to take away the space from religious clerics in the name of scholars or whatever, but they have taken enough space, and now we need to fight our battle on secular grounds. There will be people who will bring quotations from Islam, lakum dinikum waliya din, but then Taliban also bring out quotations from Islam in which they justify all the public
So my
killing.
sister, the problem is that you cannot take religion Islam from Pakistan. The whole Pakistan was separated because based on
We can from the
So,
constitution.
what you can do a secular constitution, clear separation, but you wouldn't control the community. What you need to do in Pakistan, as I have learned, is that the Pakistani scholars like Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayya and other scholars in the Muslim world that are balanced and they are seeing these things. We need to engage these movements.
So I
Very
don't want to have like this debate between us, but Barelvis were supported and financed under the same rhetoric. Barelvis, and now we see TLP as a result of that. Barelvis used to be considered as progressive section of Islam, so everyone would say we should finance or we should support Barelvis. They are more tolerant, but now they have become extremists because they see that there is more leverage in Pakistani politics. And also, I want to just about Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. People of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa are secular. The only part of Pakistan where secular movements exist and people own secular movements is Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. So I think that it's very easy to disenfranchise those only if the state stop recognizing religious extremism. Thank you.
We're gonna get a question here.
Thank you very much for a really enlightening discussion. In terms of the question of blasphemy, I think a lot of attention has been paid to Pakistan, but I think and also on the formal laws, which in fact define it as such. But I think that the problem of blasphemy goes much further, and I would go to the extent of saying that it is a worldwide problem. Now, what I mean by that is that you can have blasphemy laws, which define what blasphemy is, and you can have social norms which define in effect what blasphemy is. If you go all the way from the Salman Rushdie affair to right now, when it's happened, for instance, the Charlie Hebdo, the self-censorship by institutions, organizations, even the West, I think we have a de facto blasphemy law operating. And the de facto
Do you have a question?
the question is, has that been studied? Is that an issue?
Has what been studied?
The de facto expansion and the worldwide existence of blasphemy laws, because in India, you have radical Muslims who are Hindus based on the same slogan, Sat and Shikha. So therefore, I think it is much broader. And I would like to get their response, because society is composed of laws as well as norms. Thank you.
Laws and norms. Anyone want to weigh in on this one?
Yeah, I did not understand your question, but are you suggesting that when you say de facto blasphemy laws, do you mean in the context of Muslims? Because you gave the India example, are you suggesting Muslims are inherently violent?
I'm saying that some have killed because they say it is blasphemy.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Okay.
And therefore, they are enforcing the blasphemy law.
Okay.
And there is a lot, for instance, after the Charlie Hebdo and the Salman Rushdie affair, and even after the cartoon affair, people in the West did not dare to print the cartoons through the Princeton, publication. What I'm trying to say is that there is a wide amount of self-censorship, which amounts to de facto blasphemy, which needs to be looked at.
I think that's a fair point.
Yeah, we understand. Go ahead if you want to answer it.
No, I think that's a fair point. I mean, I think this is a very complex, nuanced subject that you're talking about. And I think we need to understand the context of there being blasphemy laws in a lot of countries. I mean, blasphemy laws in South Asia are actually a colonial legacy. The British first introduced blasphemy laws, and then they were carried forward by Pakistan mostly. And I think what needs to also the US has blasphemy laws. Michigan, Massachusetts, Utah, Wyoming, they are protected, of course, because the First Amendment gives you rights in the US to speak up against religion, for religion, whatever. But I think what you were talking about, yes, I think that freedom of expression should be, but it's not an absolute right. I'm not one of those who subscribe to freedom of expression being an absolute right. I think there has to be respect. I think there has to be, also we need to address complex issues such as Islamophobia. I think in the present environment, I think it's an actually potent threat that we also need to address. So I think there are a lot of issues there that we need to collectively look at. It's a complex and a nuanced subject, which I think can be perhaps addressed at another time.
I was just talking about the killing. Right, killing. I'm not talking about Islamophobia.
Right, so the laws give people cover, but even if there aren't the laws, we still see the same sort of behavior. And so the point is the laws give people more confidence in to go out and commit violence, which is what really discussion's about. But you're right, we are seeing this behavior in places where there isn't even the laws existing, just it's kind of become a norm in some cultures. We're gonna we're kind of at the end, so we're gonna ask for a brief round from each of you on really what should the priority be for those people watching the international community? How can they help support what should be our priority as we leave today? And I know we have a lot of time for question and answers, but I'll tell you what, your talks were all so robust and so fascinating and helpful that I feel like it was such a worthwhile time together, even though we didn't have a ton of time to do the dialogue. But I'll hand the mic to each of you, and if you can go ahead and think of, give some advice to those who care about you, care about the stories just told. What can we do to stand with you?
So one thing that I know my father didn't receive when he was imprisoned in Pakistan was legal assistance. It was very difficult for him to get a lawyer that would represent him because a lot of the times they were doing so for either there was a group where they would do it for financial gain because they knew that he would, he was a US citizen, they were trying to get more money out of us, whatever it was. The other group were minorities themselves. Who were actually went into hiding afterwards because they feared for their lives. Even representing someone who was on trial was scary. And so legal assistance by the US would have helped a lot. It would have actually saved my father's life. The only assistance that the US government gave us was toiletries for him in prison. What was that going to do for us? We continuously asked for legal assistance and we just never got it. Eventually, one of his lawyers ended up dying, and then another was appointed. That's actually how we found out that he passed away was when a lawyer sent it to us through a text message. So I just feel like legal assistance is what we need when these victims are in prison.
I would say, besides legal aid, developing protection mechanisms for human rights defenders and people who are accused of blasphemy. In 2019, when I was put on a kill list and I was in hiding for 4 months in Pakistan, if I was not a well-known human rights activist, it would have been really difficult to keep my story alive and to keep myself alive. And during my 4 months of hiding, I did learn that there are no protection mechanisms, safeguards. People who are usually accused of blasphemy. In 2019, I was not accused of blasphemy, but targeted because of my human rights work. But most blasphemy victims, once they're accused, their whole family have to relocate. They have to go into hiding because they have no security. They're at risk of being killed. Their whole family, their houses are being at risk of burned down. So we really need to do something about providing resources towards protection of the families of the accused.
I'll actually second what Mashal said. I think we need to value people while they're still alive. I think robust legal assistance is a major thing. One of my closest childhood friends was in prison for 4.5 years. He got out recently, thankfully, on bail. And we ran from pillar to post. Being in the US does not save you, does not protect you. Being a US citizen does not protect you. There has to be a streamlined platform for families of victims of blasphemy accusations to get help. And you go to organizations, they express sympathy with you, but it's very hard to find a lawyer who is an expert, who's on the ground. It's also very hard to raise awareness about these issues with the State Department through backdoor channels. So I think what I would recommend is, to Mr. Elsanousi as well, is the great work that USCIRF does. If you could also perhaps think about having a platform for people whose loved ones are in prison or at risk, if there's a streamlined way, because a lot of times what they are okay. You can put up. A lot of victims are not have the luxury to put their names out there, because if you put somebody's name out there, they are more at risk. Somebody could actually kill them in the prison or in court. So it has to be a very complex, nuanced system of getting help. And right now, it depends on how powerful an individual's family is in order to get help. So I think that should be more streamlined.
I think I have one example, one result of that advocacy, and that is the example we have. There is a book under the threat of death, and the person who was under the threat of death was on a death row for 8 years in solitary confinement, is sitting among us. Shagufta Council. Can you speak us that?
I don't think we have.
I just finished in 1 second. And then
We're over time
I just
already. You don't have time.
so we released Shagufta. Shagufta was released when Pakistan's trade agreement with European Union on GSP plus status was threatened. So European Union had in 2021 a resolution passed at the European Parliament saying to Pakistan, release this couple, otherwise we suspend the GSP plus status. So around 680 parliamentarians signed that resolution. After 2 months, Shagufta was released. So my point is that if the IMF or if the other FATA or other US mechanism which is giving aid to Pakistan can be connected to obligations on 27 conventions, any aid which is going to Pakistan should be connected to implement and obligate to Pakistan to implement 27 UN Human Rights Conventions. I think whenever you give any aid, you can also put condition on it, that we give you this aid, but we also put condition on it to implement 27 conventions, as the European Union did. They are giving the free trade to Pakistan on GSP plus status, but Pakistan has obligation to implement the 27 conventions. That will help, and also the sanction of individual judges, such as individual judges who are so extremes, giving people a sentence to death, and the police officers or clerics who are so extreme, taking the law into their own hands. If the US can sanction few of them and few of judges, I think there will be change. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you, Nadine. We need to rush to the airport here, but I just want to really begin by what my sister Mashal Naseem and your powerful story, and I would like to amplify your story. I'm not sure, Nadine, we have her in the Earth Summit? Or?
Yeah, we definitely would love to stay in touch with you. All of you are just.
So we have the Religious Freedom Summit globally. We have the ministerial to advance religious freedom. So I would like to be in touch with you, Michelle, so I can put you on this stage, because you basically have your personal story telling what blasphemy was. So we'll do that. So we'll be in touch with that. And I really appreciate your courage and patience in doing this. It's really amazing. Now, a couple of things. I must agree with you. There are 96 countries in the world today that have blasphemy laws in their books. So it's going to be difficult to take all of these laws. Even in the 16 or 17 countries that we have in the CPC list, the two countries that, when Nadine was chairing the commission, worked with the State Department, get off the CPC list, and that's Uzbekistan and Sudan, right? And both of them, they do have blasphemy law in their books. But the reason they were off the CPC list and put in the special laws list, because they are not implementing the blasphemy laws in their books. So that is the room so we have. Second, I want to also mention that these are very good ideas, creating a platform to those who are suffering from blasphemy and all of that, and I will mention that to my colleagues as well. But finally, I also want to say that we are also add this to the list of recommendations. We're lacking mechanisms to protect those who are speaking against violent extremism. So my sister from Pakistan, probably you know Sister Mashal Naseem. Sister Mashal Naseem. So I can give you a number of examples of brave women around the world speaking against extremism, but there is nothing. Multilateralism in this building and others, they have no mechanism in place to actually protect those who are speaking against extremism and violence. And that's mechanism somehow we need to find it.
I think that
so
would
much.
be a great overarching USCIRF recommendation to add to this next year. So I would highly recommend that we bring
Yes.
that to the
Yes.
commission.
Yeah, actually, I wish Mariam Ibrahim was here, but we are actually, I just want to say thank you for coming because it takes courage. Now we're in a room, we have heard very harrowing things, and we're responsible. So I'm thankful that you were willing to come here and take that responsibility. And now we have a responsibility where we go, whether you're a diplomat, to raise this where you go, if you're civil society, if you're an individual, to bring up these issues. Because now that we've heard, we're responsible. And we have further recommendations for states. You can approach us. These are issues we have to be raising. UPR, during the UNGA resolution on extrajudicial killings, this is not something we can just make some statements down. That this has to be a constant reminder. And thank you all of the panelists for speaking and sharing. And we're happy to have Shagufta here. She survived 9 years in a Pakistani prison. And she's smiling, so I think that's a testament to you, and also it shows what kind of people they what the Pakistani blasphemy laws. They target innocent individuals who are just living their lives, and we cannot have it like that. So thank you, and we'll share that link with you. It's in the back, and please take a minute to look over the individuals that you can see around you. We're not the first people to speak about this. We've had brave people from Mohammed in Sudan. You have Faraj Foda. There's a list of people who have died for speaking like you guys are. And I think actually that we can speak openly is already we've come somewhere. And we need to keep going. So encourage states. This has to be raised. Every single country. There are 11 states right now who have the death penalty for apostasy and blasphemy. And still in the UPRs, I don't see specific recommendations on decriminalizing apostasy or blasphemy. And it has to be, no question about it. Every single review and every single time you have an opportunity, please raise it. Thank you to everyone. Thank you for your courage. And also all of us, we gotta take your courage and try and make a difference where we go. Thank you so much. It's not in vain. Thank you.